1.
Well, welcome everyone. This is Guy Page. We're here for Friday at 4, the half-hour weekly news and commentary program produced by VDC-TV. I'm here with social media director Paul Bean, our producer Caleb Morvan, and we invite you first of all to, as soon as you want to say anything, comment online on YouTube or X or wherever you're watching this, and also please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. That'll help us out an awful lot. So this week saw another citizen protest at the Vermont State House. It was called Tap Trees, Not Vermonters. Here's a sample of what the crowd heard from former Senator John Rogers.
The legislature wasted time on an Act 250 bill, which makes it easier for wealthy developers to develop in downtowns that are dumping raw sewage into our waterways, while making it harder to develop and subdivide in rural communities where most young Vermonters want to live. The legislature wasted time on an energy bill that was written by energy developers and will profit energy developers and utilities at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars a year on working Vermonters. This energy bill does nothing to address climate change. It only rewards energy developers who contribute to the legislators that are forwarding the bill. This is a regressive bill. It will punish working class and poor Vermonters and make millionaires even richer. The legislature wasted time on a housing bill. It makes it easier for wealthy developers to build large buildings filled with tiny apartments that would be called affordable. The people who live in these apartments would be able to afford rent, but will never be able to save up money to buy their own home. True progress on housing will only happen when we make Vermont a more affordable place to live, so that young people can have a house on a small piece of land connected to nature, where they can grow a garden and raise a few animals. This will allow people to build equity and create intergenerational wealth that renters will never have.
So John Rogers was talking there about the revision of Act 250, which our legislature passed. That's a revision to our land use and housing development law. And if it's not successfully vetoed by Governor Scott, we'll have even tighter restrictions on developing housing in rural Vermont. So most of the half dozen legislators who pulled the levers of power to make the Act 250 revision happen live in rural Vermont homes like this. Pretty nice, huh? In fact, one of those favorite half dozen does live in the house you're looking at, or at least did the last time the legislative website actually published the home addresses of our representatives. They stopped doing that a few years ago. But you get the idea. Spacious old farmhouses, heirlooms of history from Vermont's agricultural past, maybe a rustic, chic, rural McMansion. That's where they live. The newly built home they want for you, and especially for your kids when they're raising their families, is a little more like this. Yeah, what you're looking at there is the Taylor Street Montpelier Affordable Housing Complex, built a couple years ago to the tune of about $350,000 per housing unit. Many millions for the whole thing. Now, cozy little housing projects like this are springing up all over Vermont's urban centers, in case you haven't noticed. From these climate-friendly, well-insulated, heat-pumping apartments, they hope that the lucky residents can walk to work, or, if they have to, take the bus, with the bus terminal, you may notice in the Taylor Street picture, conveniently located downstairs. Your kids will love it, because nothing says hearth and home like a front yard filled with homeless drug users. Yeah, Paul just sort of snickered there, but in Taylor Street in Montpelier, yes, that's what you got.
It's true.
And I think that may not be the only one of these new Vermont housing projects where that's the case. So Now, our legislative leaders, if you've met them, talked to them at the State House, they seem like nice people. You know, why did they do this to Act 250? And please do not suggest that they're listening to their friends and neighbors who are worried about their new homes, little new homes on half-acre lots, spoiling the view of their little slice of Eden, because that's not it. What it's really about, they say, is the bears and climate. Allow me to explain why they want more urban homes like Taylor Street. But very few new homes in rural areas, whether nice big ones like this or even small, simple homes for growing young families like this. This bill was written and ushered through the legislature by Representative Amy Sheldon, the East Middlebury Democrat who chairs a key environmental committee. After the final vote, she said on the House floor that she hopes the bill will, and I'm quoting here, support human and natural communities as they adapt to a changing climate by establishing a location-based structure for state land use regulation that protects critical natural resources with encouraging economic development and housing. Yes, housing was the last thing mentioned there, not exactly the last word as we understand the term. And I was struck by the term natural communities. Did you know there is a natural community? It's not just looking after wildlife anymore. The state's been doing that for a long time. The bears and the possums and the bees, they all have their own communities now. Apparently co-equal with humans. What they want and need, or at least what humans like Amy Sheldon thinks that they want and need, matter just as much as what voting humans want, maybe more. And if you think I'm exaggerating on that, one of the reasons given for limiting housing in rural areas is that it would harm wildlife habitat and wildlife corridors. In other words, if a bear might have to, walk around a newly built house, gets in the way of its corridor, then that house just isn't going to get built. The road to that house isn't going to get built. It's as if they think that having taken over the hunting grounds of the Native Americans, which we did do these centuries ago, we now need to surrender the land to the other native, non-human inhabitants and relegate ourselves and our children to tiny apartments in urban cores, what in some cities they call the housing projects. And that would all be very noble if these same folks passing the laws were living on Taylor Street instead of here. So, Paul, I don't know if you've gotten any comments yet.
No comments yet.
Okay, well, we welcome them, folks.
Yeah, we do. We want your comments, guys. What do you make of this? That's important to us as we're talking about here.
That's right.
But it's a really an interesting concept. This idea that housing for thee, like housing for me, but not for thee.
That's
and
right.
It does seem to be kind of like the MO of the legislature currently. They seem to think that, well, I should be allowed to live in this big, beautiful home because I'm fighting for climate change. I deserve this spot, right? Or is that not it, do you think?
No, yes, I don't quite understand it. I could have shown a lot more pictures of some of these key senators who have been casting the in-committee votes on this, and where they live. If you look at MapQuest, it's a house surrounded by acres and acres and acres of woods and fields. That picture we saw, that is not the exception. It's certainly a very fine home, but in terms of its environment, it's not the exception. A lot of these folks live in very nice homes surrounded by a lot of woods and fields and nature. And clearly, when they moved here 20, 30, 40 years ago, that's what they wanted.
Well,
and that's what they got. But that, Paul, is not what you are getting, and that really ticks me off.
Yeah, it really ticks me off too.
Yeah.
But perhaps they think maybe that their house with all this acreage that's going to be protected for them, maybe they justify. Well, I'm protecting the environment. I'm owning this bit of land and I'm saving it from anyone ruining it and building I don't know, maybe a few more houses or something like that. Even though we're desperate for housing right now. And I'll also add, Guy, one of my favorite things that we do in Vermont, and I don't know if they do this in other states, but you put on the license plates of the vehicles of the legislators, like their number,
Right.
and you can look up, whose car is that? Who is that?
Right.
So, you could take a little stroll through the state legislators, the state house parking.
Yes.
And you can see all these, brand new Audis and Teslas and big trucks and, these beautiful vehicles. And it's so funny because I think I told you this too. And, I was at Sarducci's the other night. I went there on a whim, just as if I was called. I decided to go to Sarducci's.
Maybe
And
you were.
I think I was, because I showed up there and there was 8 state senators sitting there together around a table and, talking amongst each other, which, I mean, look, everybody deserves to enjoy life. Don't get me wrong. It's just funny to me. I can't quite explain it. It just seems like, they really have a lock on the system and the money that's running through the state. And they're also going to make all these regulations so that you can't even get in on the game. We get to own the beautiful homes. We get to have the nice, beautiful cars, and even the EVs for that matter. And we're going to go out to eat at beautiful restaurants with nice meals, but not you guys, not the rest of you useless eaters.
We ran a story a couple of days ago by the Pew Charitable Trust, which is one of these organizations that supports NPR and does a lot of studies. They tend to be definitely on the left-hand side of things.
Sure.
So I figured, well, they're just going to be saying Vermont's housing regulations are just ducky. But they did not say that. They said that they're restrictive and they really hurt minorities. And that minorities have suffered greatly in being able to buy homes. And because you think about it, Paul, where does our wealth come from? I think John Rogers might have referred to
Yes, he
this.
did. He did.
Where does our wealth come from? I can say I'm a little older than you, Paul, and I was able to buy my own home because they were so much cheaper back then. But it was with help from my parents.
Yeah.
They helped me with the down payment, which they could afford to do because they had inherited some money from their parents' homes selling, and they had some money. And when both of my parents passed, my siblings and I inherited really the sale of 2 homes that they had, and which really helped us, all of us, with our housing situation.
Yes.
Now, what happens if you don't have that?
Yeah.
If you cannot pass on to your children your generational wealth, that just seems, I'm not sure what the word is. There's a bad liberal word for it. Sort of, really kind of oppressive and unfair.
Yeah.
Just unfair.
I would agree that it's unfair. And I think it's actually kind of downright scary to think that this is something that maybe people in the coming generations won't be able to enjoy. It's sad. It makes me really upset. And that's something that John and I talked about on the interview the other day. And the truth is, your wealth it comes from generations before. And how you build wealth, by the way, as a family, as a unit, as opposed to depending upon the government, which is ultimately what these people want for everybody else, not them, unless they're siphoning it in some way from the government.
Right.
But I think that's what we've lost in this country, or maybe not necessarily in this country, but definitely in Vermont, is this idea that you can be entrepreneurial, you can grow up within a family business, for that matter, or grow up on a family farm, and that if you work hard and you expand and you evolve, that you can continue that family farm, you can continue making money that way. or like you say too, with the homes, it's the same concept. But like we're so far removed from that. We're so far removed from depending on the family and like the structure of the family that I think that the thought and conversation that we're even having is like a new idea to a lot of people. Maybe not for some of our viewers, but definitely I think for a lot of our legislators, they just don't think like that. They don't have any concept of it, and I don't understand why. Because
That's government's job now.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Here's your 1 or 2 bedroom tiny apartment over the bus terminal.
Yeah. Woo! That's gonna flood every couple of years, by the way, because of geoengineering. But anyway,
Right.
Well, we do have a couple comments.
Okay.
We have one from BB. Don't know who that is, but I like the name. May now be too expensive for us to move back home to Vermont. Very sad. BB, we're curious. Where are you now? And what exactly are you concerned about that's too expensive to keeping you come from Vermont? Timothy Page, he put in a couple comments for us. I think you might know him. He writes, 7 Days just did an article on how Winooski is pricing low-income immigrants and minorities out of the city. And that actually, I did see some of that story. I didn't read the full thing, admittedly, but there's people are starting to notice. I see this concept that we're talking about becoming a little bit more prevalent in the left, so to say, because I think people across the board politically realize we all want home ownership. I think like a lot of Democrats feel the same way too, but they're maybe clouded by this climate change is going to kill us all. We need to preserve all the land. Humans are terrible, that kind of thing.
I think they want it, but they've made a choice. The bears, the climate, or humans building houses.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of them, even before climate and the bears came along, the idea that they moved from New Jersey, from New York, they moved up here to get away from sprawl and growth.
Yes.
And now it's sort of like over my dead body.
Yeah. We're not doing it.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And the Act 250 essentially is set up to do that. I mean, they would deny that. They'd say, oh, no, it's much more fair than that. But in practice, not really.
Yeah, no.
Awful hard place to build.
It really is. It's concerning. As somebody who is, once again, multi-generational Vermonter, family's been here for a very long time, and to think that it's becoming less and less.
Well, Paul, what is the solution? We've kvetched about this.
Yeah.
What can be done?
So let's move on then. Let's get back to the topic of this Tap Trees Not Vermonters
all right.
Rally yesterday. So, and you say, what's the solution? Well, I'm not alluding necessarily to the idea that just having a bunch of rallies is the solution, because I don't think that's the solution, although it does help, especially raise awareness. And thank you to everybody that was there yesterday. That was pretty incredible. I think we probably had, I don't know, how many people do you think were there, Guy?
70 or 80 maybe?
Yeah. It was a good little
crowd.
rally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had signs, of course, Tap Trees Not Vermonters, etc. The solution, well, I've thought a lot about this today, and I was thinking about it last night, and you, even before the rally, you were kind of getting to the point, and you wanted me to ask John in the interview the other day, okay, so what's the course of action? What's the plan? What are we going to do about this? Are you collecting names? Are you building an email list? Like, what's going on? And you have in one faction, you have like the Get Real team. You have those guys. They're doing their thing. They're trying to revive the Republican Party. You have the Governor Scott and some of his people. They're trying to get some Republicans to run, but they're also looking at independents and even some Democrats to run in certain districts. And then you have this Tap Trees Not Vermonters group, and I think they're calling them Downstream. Is what they're calling them.
Downstream Vermont, and they're not like Republican at all.
No, they're not.
As far as I can tell.
They're not Republican at all. Like John Rogers sat across from me a few days ago, said, I'm a Vermont Democrat, which is funny to me because, Vermont Democrats, and there's just little animosity between me and some of them, but it just makes me laugh because John calls himself one. Right. So I guess where am I going with this? What's the solution? I said this to John, too, in the interview. It sounds like to me what needs to happen is there needs to be a very defined position on who the enemy is, so to say. And by enemy, I don't necessarily mean, like enemy, like they're terrible. But
not so much the people, but here's what has to change.
Well, yeah, exactly. And actually, for that matter, it is kind of the people for that. Because we can look at it all day. We can talk about Vermont Democrats all day. Oh, they're Vermont Democrats. We've got to vote them out. And it's like, well, if that's the position you have, I would agree that some of these people happen to be Vermont Democrats. These people living in these big, beautiful homes and telling you what you are and you're not allowed to do. Meanwhile, they have all the resources possible, So I guess my point in what I'm saying is there needs to be a clear, defined position on this is what's wrong with Vermont. These are the people that are doing it, and they need to be removed from office.
Gotcha.
Period. There's no, discrepancies. Everybody is on the same page. Like, I don't have an issue with people that have democratic values, true democratic values, but I do have an issue with people that are pure utopian ideologues that are pushing a message that basically is going to bankrupt the poor working class Vermonter. Right. And I think when I think about the Democrats, the original.
And I want to pick up on that for a second, Paul.
Sure.
That is not hyperbole. When you look at the energy legislation that got passed, that's going to add $1 billion $1 billion over 10 years in increased energy rates for like a net zero, really great for the renewable power industry, bunch of regulatory changes, and the property tax increase, which is going to be somewhere between 12 and 14% now, and my gosh, the taxes that they created to make up the difference between what used to be a 20% property tax increase, and now it's quote unquote only 12 to 14.
Exactly. It's so funny.
With the same thing coming next year.
Exactly.
And so it's like expanding some sales taxes, all sorts of stuff. And you've got to ask, is there any real concern for people being able to live and enjoy life? Oh yeah, and then the housing stuff.
Yeah,
it just where's the concern for the people?
So I have a few comments here. Monique Thurston, do you know Monique? Yeah, she writes. Monique. Okay, she writes. Kevin Ellis suggested today that a connection between the folks who participated to the protest yesterday and the angry business people in Burlington would be a powerful force. He is right. Huh. Kevin must have been talking about that on WDEV. I didn't hear earlier.
He probably was.
I would actually agree with that, and I think that's the thing is like, I think there's really is a big difference between people that are like Vermonters and somewhat maybe they have democratic views or what maybe they perceive democratic views used to be like. In my opinion, it used to be a little bit more inviting to somebody like me, for example, but now they're just like so far out of the wagon that it's hard to even wrap your head around the choices that they're making. And I think it's because they really are so brainwashed that we're all going to die because of climate change and that, we have to do absolutely everything and anything. But I think there's room for people that exist within the Democratic coalition that don't actually feel that way, and they have the values of say, I don't know, 70s, 80s, 90s Democrats, and that happens to be a lot of the population, by the way. And they're thinking, wait a second, maybe we've gone a little too far to the left. Could that be?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We do have a few more comments.
Oh, good.
Patricia Crocker writes, it doesn't matter to these legislators. The Tea Party filled the whole lawn of the State House 9 years ago, and nothing changed. I don't remember that.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
I don't. I remember the Tea Party movement. I don't remember that, but I believe it. And what has to change, of course, is Maria von Trapp's daughter once told me, very strong, as Maria von Trapp was a very strong woman, so was her daughter. And she once told me, our representatives in Montpelier need to change or be exchanged.
Yeah.
What you were saying.
It's as simple as that.
And so the short thing there is, if you're not happy with it, if you think that they're leading us down the wrong road, run or find someone who will run and support them.
Yeah.
It's really, and I'm kind of with you on this, Paul. Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. It really is more about the policy stance that they're willing to take.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I talked to John the other day, and I've talked to a lot of legislators like this, and I've heard Phil say this, Governor Phil Scott say this a handful of times.
Isn't it a great state where we can actually call the governor Phil because we actually know him as Phil?
Yeah, we do, and I think a
Yeah.
lot of people know
Yeah.
him as Phil too. I think I will add, just as a short note, we live in a very special state
We
for a
do.
number of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we can go in and talk right to our legislators, which I'm not sure what it's like in other states, but I can't help
No.
but to wonder it's not as
They're all screened by staff and stuff.
yeah, like
Yeah.
we're very I think before we I think that's why we feel this animosity in the building this year is because there's no like it's getting intense and there's no degree of separation between us and them.
You know, maybe
And I think they're really feeling the weight of it.
a big tense family in a small house.
But I forgot what I was going to say. I was making another point.
I'm
it was
sorry, I distracted you.
Phil, what did he say? Yes, so he said that he believes that the best legislation, and John said this too, the best legislation that happens is when there is a balance, and you never know which way they're going to swing because
Right.
who knows, this player on the Republican side might really feel strongly about this issue on the other end of the spectrum, and he really fits in with the progressives. Who knows,
Sure,
right?
it happens.
It does happen. And then maybe you have a Democrat who feels very strongly about a very similar issue. And it just seems to me like it would be a lot more fun to report on, just to be, which way is it going to go? We have no idea.
Yeah.
It'd be just exciting and
Kind of
real
like
democracy.
Congress right now.
Yeah.
So before we go, I want to make one more pitch, and you need to give us an update
Yeah.
on what is going on with the creamy machine.
Yeah, get that a little closer so everyone
Okay.
can see.
How's
So
that?
That's good. You
Okay.
can see. There it is. Yeah, so the creamy machine, I am now open. Beans Creamies.
All right.
We're open. Actually, not technically open right now, but the only days, so we're open on Wednesday and Thursday
Okay.
from 4 to 9.
Okay.
On Friday from 4:45-ish, whenever we end the show, to 9. And then Saturday, 12 to 9. I have two flavors, chocolate vanilla. It's heavy cream, 10% milk fat. It's, I mean, they're really creamy. They're really, I've heard good feedback. I don't know. I think they're, pretty good.
I'm pretty sure you need some quality control before you go on shift here at 4:45. So if you need someone like to test the creamy, Paul, I'm your man.
No problem, guy. I think we can make that happen. No,
right.
I think we can do that.
All
But
right.
a pitch to you all. Come on down and say hello. I'd love to meet you.
And where are we, by the way?
That's right. Good point. 470 North Main Street, Northfield, Vermont, 05663, right next to Rocket J's or Convenience Plus. And, fair warning, though, happy to talk about politics, but let's not overdo it, especially if there's a lot of people around.
Yes, there's a line.
People, I'm happy to talk at all times, but especially if we're busy and
No.
we don't want to talk politics all the time.
And little ad for Rocket J's. That's a great food truck.
Yes, it is.
Man, if Beansies, for those of you from Burlington, remember Beansies in Battery Park? Rocket J's, same thing. So come on down. So anyway, I think that's the show.
There we go.
And thanks for tuning in to Friday at 4. And please subscribe, like, and we'll see you next Friday at 4 o'clock.
Thanks, everybody.